I'm Janet Clark, and you are listening to the Sales Matchmaker podcast. Hello, it is Janet Clark. I am the Sales Matchmaker, and you are listening to the Sales Matchmaker podcast. Today, I want to dig into that big fear that derails coaches and consultants and salespeople from reaching their full potential and being able to make the big impact that they want to make in the world. And that is the fear of rejection. So we're going to discuss what is rejection, why does it hurt so much, and how can you deal with it? So look, many sales trainers and therapists will tell you that you just have to learn to overcome it, right? You just have to learn to not take it personally and to pretend that it doesn't exist. And you're going to hear people say things like, well, the reason that you have this fear of rejection is because you're lacking in self-esteem, or you have this low opinion of yourself. Or sometimes they're going to tell you that you need to go back and look at your childhood and deal with whatever caused this fear of rejection in the first place. Well, the truth of the matter is, I think this is all just a bunch of psychobabble, because every one of us has had this rejection in our life. It doesn't matter. Some people have had it worse. I agree, right? Some people have had a lot to overcome in their childhoods. But no matter what, even if you had a perfect childhood, you still had some rejection in your life. We all do, right? At some point in our life, it just happens because we live in a social world. And because of that, we have to interact with other social beings. And during these social interactions, things happen, right? We can be criticized. We can be judged. We can be rejected. We can be made to feel small or wrong or just insignificant. It's part of being human. And so what we have to think about in sales is that these experiences that we have, whether they're large or whether they're small, they always hurt. And when we get rejected in a sales situation, it hurts. So we don't want to minimize the fact that there's feelings associated with that, right? And a lot of times it hurts more than we expect it to, even if we feel like we kind of have good self-esteem, right? And we've kind of overcome a lot of that. So the truth of the matter is that the fear of rejection is really hardwired into the human psyche. And maybe it's even more than you realize. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But first, what I want to dig into is how the fear of rejection can derail you if you are a transformational coach or a consultant or a salesperson, because this fear will wear you down. And I'm going to talk about what happens if we don't figure out how to at least cope with it and to minimize it to as much as possible. So first of all, let's talk about what happens and how detrimental this fear can be for us. So the first thing that will typically happen is you'll start to feel afraid to share your own point of view with other people. And you may start to shy away from expressing your own opinions about things because you fear that other people are going to disapprove or disagree or criticize. But yet, to be successful as a transformational coach or a consultant or salesperson, you have to be willing to take a stand and you have to be able to speak your truth. And regardless of what others think, that's how you're going to build your tribe and attract your ideal clients. Okay, so another thing that happens with this fear of rejection is that we tend to start copying other people's behaviors, right? Because this fear of rejection starts to get a hold on us and we start to feel like we don't really want to be different. We want to fit in. And so we start giving up that part of us that's like you totally unique, that makes us special. And we tend to want to fit in. I mean, you see this happening with kids all the time, especially little kids who then end up in school and they start going into middle school. And now all of a sudden they, that little independent streak, their uniqueness starts to meld in because they start wanting to try to belong. So it's totally normal for human beings to do that. But we want to figure out how to overcome it, because it's going to hurt your chances of making the impact and changing lives if you can't maximize your own skills and your own unique talents. So when you try to fit in, you just start getting lost in the noise. And in order to be a transformational coach or consultant or salesperson, you can't be lost in the noise, right? You have to stand out. You have to be somebody who is willing to be yourself. And that's going to cause sometimes other people not to like you. And that's part of what we fear, right? We don't want people not to like us. Okay, so another thing that happens because of this fear of rejection is that we become emotional. We start reacting from an emotional place based on other people's opinions. Now, the interesting thing about that is that sometimes those opinions change the wind, but yet in the moment, they hurt us, right? They make us react, and we have these feelings. And these feelings feel like criticism, or sometimes we even reacting to somebody's praise, right? But the problem is that it's outward, like we're looking for something outside us to validate us and to make us feel good about who we are. And when we do that, we're really literally on an emotional roller coaster, because we never know what's going to come at us, who's going to reject us, who's going to criticize us, who's going to praise us, right? So when you are sort of looking for that outside approval or reacting to an outside disapproval, that will wreak havoc with you as a salesperson, because your livelihood depends on your ability to continue to stand in your own truth, right, of who you are. And you can't really base your livelihood, your happiness, or your success on other people's opinions and their reactions to you. So that's another big thing that really is a detriment with this fear of rejection. Okay. The fourth thing is that when you're dealing with fear of rejection, you can become easily manipulated by people. So what happens is that you're constantly seeking, again, this outside approval. And because of that, people can manipulate you. They can figure out that they can knock you off your game by either criticizing you, or maybe by praising you, they can get you to react in a certain way that is for their best interest, but maybe not yours. So what happens is people can start taking you for granted. But the bottom line is that you're going to lose if you're totally at the mercy of everybody else's opinions about you, and that you rise and fall with what's coming at you from the outside. So what we want you to help you to do as we go through this is to figure out how to rise above that, so that you don't need everybody else's approval or other people's approval. Because when you can stand on your own, you're going to build a lot more trust with people. And when you can build trust, then that's how you're going to end up becoming a really good salesperson or coach. Okay. And the final thing is that rejection, this fear of rejection, is going to cause you to suffer these feelings of dissatisfaction and guilt. Now, the fear of rejection is going to give you this feeling of extreme dissatisfaction whenever somebody rejects you, right? So and when you're dissatisfied, you're going to be unhappy. So look, we didn't get into this business because we want to be unhappy, right? It's debilitating to constantly be subjecting ourselves to this rejection and not knowing how to deal with it. So, look, if you chose to be in sales, if you chose to be a coach or a consultant, it's because you want to stand in the fire with people. You want to transform lives. You want to make a difference in the world. And you can't allow rejection, as hard as it is, to take you down, because you are going to get it. Like, there's no way that you're not going to encounter rejection. So what we want to work on is the fear part of that, right? Okay. So look, as I stated earlier, our brains are hardwired to fear rejection. According to an article that I recently read in Psychology Today, they were saying that the same areas of our brain that feel physical pain are stimulated and activated when we have rejection. So it is a very real thing within our brain that this rejection does not feel good. And it's almost the same as physical pain. So of course we're going to fear it. Of course we're going to try to avoid it. So that's perfectly natural, right? We are going to try to avoid pain. It's the fight or flight mechanism that is part of our human anatomy, right? It's just a part of who we are. So the first thing is, we really do want to recognize and accept that fear of rejection is perfectly normal. It's very real. So once we come to that conclusion, then we want to start figuring out, okay, how are we going to deal with this so that we can minimize it, so that it actually doesn't cause those 5 patterns that we talked about just a few minutes ago to occur. So there are some things, I mean, this is the good news, right? There are some ways that you can respond to rejection within yourself that's going to make it like just plateau. It's going to make it easier and much less painful for you. So what happens when you start feeling the fear or the pain of rejection? What most people do is they tend to make it worse. So the first thing I want you to do is to stop doing that. When you feel the pain of rejection, don't make it worse. So what would that look like? Well, how do you think that most people respond to rejection? Somebody outside them said, no, I hate you, I criticize you, I don't like you, whatever. Most people tend to then start inflicting more pain on themselves in their own head. They start beating themselves up because somebody else said something that made them feel rejected. So rather than just acknowledging that your feelings have been hurt and moving on, maybe giving yourself a little bit of pity, a little self-love, you tend to start saying, yeah, I'm crap. I screwed that up. I really don't know what I'm doing. I can't, I'm no good, right? This is what we tend to do. This is human nature. So we have to become aware of that, and we can change it. You can't start calling yourself names. You can't be lamenting about how stupid you are, right? You can't be telling yourself how disgusting you are, because that is what's going to cause you more pain and make the feelings hurt even more. So when your self-esteem is hurting, you are just going to damage it even further with negative self-talk. So it is unhealthy emotionally and psychologically, and it is totally self-destructive to do that. So you must stop doing that. Now, that means you have to adopt a zero tolerance for self-criticism. Now, it's easier said than done, But the first thing you have to do is you have to become aware. Now, I can remember reading, I don't remember if it was Emmett Fox or one of the great mystics. And he talked about, it could have even been, no, I don't think it was Dale Carnegie. I'm not sure who it was that said it, but I remember this. Um, if you hear yourself and you catch yourself doing that, you should actually say to yourself, cancel that thought. And that if you can make a habit of starting to recognize when you are self-sabotaging, self-criticizing yourself, that you could actually reverse the thought. Say, cancel that thought, and then reframe the thought and say, no, that person may have not wanted what I had, but I'm like, I have my own skills, I have my own talents, I have a lot of success behind me, I'm really good, right? So you have to say something positive to yourself. So that's something to work on, right? But this, what I'm giving you is tools. And now we have to use the tools, and that takes a little bit of, adapting and doing. Okay, the second thing that you can do is you can recognize that rejection is not personal. And that is true. It's not. It's based on circumstances, and usually it's someone else's circumstances. Somebody else is having a bad day. Somebody else is not the right time in their life to make a decision to move forward, right? For whatever reason, they are saying no. But that rejection is really not a rejection of you. And sometimes it's just a circumstance of, I have to pick between A and B. And you don't even know what all the things going on in somebody's mind are, why they pick somebody else over you. And it's usually not because there's something wrong with you. It's their circumstances. So, it's a hard one because it's going to require, again, consciousness on your part. It's going to require positive self-talk, reminders, but you can train yourself not to take rejection personally. And you do that by constantly affirming the aspects of yourself that you know are valuable. So part of that is making a habit of recognizing what is working and what is successful. Now, I'm going to give you an example. And this is one of my mentees that I've been working with for quite a while. He's a great guy. He's a salesperson. And I know he'll be listening to this, but I'm not going to mention his name. But anyway, he was saying to me the other day that he feels like he was kind of beating himself up, like saying like, things aren't working out the way that I had envisioned they were going to work out. And I'm doing a lot of outreach and I'm doing a lot of prospecting and I'm making a lot of connections, but I just can't seem to get to the next step. And I want to make a sale, right? And I feel like rejected and kind of he was downtrodden about it. But then I was asking him a few more questions about what was going on in his life. And he was also sharing with me that he had just recently been approached by a 7-figure coach who has their leads all dialed in, right? Somebody that is, has built their business up to 7 figures, already has a sales team, is expanding. And she has offered to hire him onto her sales team and give him an opportunity to go in there and sell for her a high level, I don't know, it's a $10,000 program. That is a huge win for him. But rather than focusing on the fact that because he's been doing the outreach, because he's been positioning himself as an expert in sales on social media, he got the attention of somebody who can give him an opportunity to earn a ton of commission and not have to even worry about where the leads are going to come from. So the deal is, he was focusing on the rejection when in fact he really needed to spend a little bit of time, which I helped him do, to see, well, what's going right in your life right now? And what was going right was huge. It was a huge win because there are thousands and thousands of salespeople out there who would love to get the attention of a 7-figure coach that has a marketing department and has a proven source of leads coming in to put on his calendar, right? So he had that opportunity. He was given that opportunity, and he wasn't appreciating that at the moment. He wasn't giving himself credit for it. I think he appreciated it, but he was too focused on what wasn't working. So look, I don't care if you have 100 people and 99% of them reject you. If one of them comes through and is a perfect solution for what you're looking for in your life, and that person can give you an opportunity for all kinds of abundance, then focus on that. But again, this takes practice, right? So anyway, we ended up having a chuckle because he was the one who said to me, he goes, yeah, I always think about what you said about don't go in your own head alone. It's a dangerous neighborhood. And he said, I'm guilty of that. I've been doing that. So I'm going to tell you right now, don't do it. And if you find yourself going into that place where you're giving yourself a lot of criticism and you're not able to handle the rejection, you need to reach out and get some help. And we'll talk about that again in a minute. So what else can you do? One of the things that you can do is you can maintain strong social connections. Don't be a lone ranger. So we are social animals, and we all need to feel wanted and valued and appreciated and loved. And you can get that by belonging to and affiliating with the right social group. Now, that group, as entrepreneurs, we're working from home. We're not in an office. We're not surrounded by coworkers, and we can become isolated. And there can be days when we're on maybe back-to-back calls, whether you're a coach or whether you're a salesperson. And a lot of the day maybe is you're getting hit with some rejection. And it can be destabilizing, right? And again, the emotional roller coaster kicks in. So if you start to feel emotionally unsettled or socially disconnected or untethered, you need to be able to know that there's a group that you can reach out to. So they're going to make you feel appreciated and loved. They're going to be your support network. So surround yourself with some kind of a community of like-minded people who will relate to what you're going through. Because heck, most of our families, unless they're all entrepreneurs, are not really going to understand how you can be going through these emotions just because you were sitting in front of your computer or talking on the phone, right? So you really want to make sure you have a strong community. And finally, remember that sales is a numbers game, and rejection is one aspect of the equation in this numbers game. So let's face it, you are not going to have 100% close, which means that you are going to have some rejection, meaning people are going to say no to your offer. So it would be great if you could close 80 to 90% of all the calls you were on, or every time you were talking with somebody in a coaching conversation or in some sort of a discovery conversation, they just totally loved everything about you, and 90% of them were like, yes, I want to move forward with you. But look, that's not reality. Most high ticket salespeople, I hate to say this, but industry-wide are closing less than 10%. But if you're working with somebody that does have really maybe good leads dialed in, or maybe you've got the process kind of flowing really well, maybe you're closing anywhere from 20 to 60%. But you have to know your numbers. Like, what is typical for you? Because you know what? If it's typical for you to close 20%, and that's okay, and you're making a living and things are good, and yes, we're still going to work on wanting to improve that. But what if that's really where you're at right now? Then you have to accept that you're going to get rejected 80% of the time. That's the way that it is. And so that has nothing to do with you personally, right? I mean, it might be a little bit of skill that you could do. Maybe you could do better qualifying. I mean, we talk about all of these things all the time, how to improve the close ratio. But the bottom line is, because we have systems, you need to have a system in place to know what is typical for you, and then not get upset when the ones that are supposed to say no, right? So, I know there's a lot of sales trainers out there that will say, like, take every no as a step closer to the yes, right? Try to reframe it in your mind. But truthfully, get a system in place to make sure that you can track your numbers and you know what to expect, because then what's going to happen is nothing is going to be a big surprise. It's not going to be unknown factor, right? You'll be able to see it in black and white. And I will tell you that if you do track your sales, what you're going to start seeing is that they're going to get better, because what you track and what you focus on actually improves. So make sure you have a system in place, and that will be one way that you can really kind of manage your expectations regarding rejection and no's. Okay, so look, what it really comes down to, and I've said this before, but I don't know, maybe you haven't heard one of my earlier podcasts, but I've really discovered that there's three things that set apart entrepreneurs that succeed from the 80% who fail. And those three things are: number one, get a mentor who can help you to see your strengths, bring out your strengths, guide you in the process, help you to avoid pitfalls so that you will experience less rejection. So number one, everybody who succeeds, that has risen to the top of the heap in this high ticket world of ours, has done it by having a mentor who's shown them the way. The second is, make sure you have a community of people around you who are like-minded. So it could be your mentor's community, perhaps because you're in, working with a specific mentor, you're part of their tribe, or maybe you join a mastermind, but make sure that you surround yourself with people who will lift you up. That is so critically important. And the third thing is, what I just talked about, is systems. People who succeed put systems in place so that they can move forward and not be overburdened with stress and pressure and things that they have to do that could be automated and systematized. So those are the three things that will, if you apply them, are going to really shift your results. They're going to catapult you to become more successful, and they're going to help you immensely to deal with fear of rejection. So rejection is never easy. It is not. It is something that is real, and we don't want to diminish the fact that it's real, but knowing how to limit the damage that rejection and fear of rejection inflicts is what's going to help you to overcome it, right? To get through it. So your self-esteem has to be protected. That is so hugely important. And you need to make sure that you put the things in place that are going to do that for you and to really help you. You can recover quickly from rejection. Yeah, it might sting a minute. And you're going to have to use all the tools I just gave you, right, that are in your tool belt, to help you to put it in perspective. And then you can move forward with confidence. And that's really the key, right, to being great at sales, is your level of confidence. So you can't allow outside influences to impact your confidence. So that's how top producing sales pros roll. They recognize, they become conscious, they take steps to overcome things that are debilitating to their success, and they don't deny things, how they're feeling. They just work through it. They They do what it takes to get through it. So I call that taking right action. And that's a really important thing. Take the right action so that you don't allow anything to derail you from succeeding with your big mission in your life. So thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for being a part of the Sales Matchmaker community. And as always, I am here. I love to talk. So reach out anytime, janet@salesmap.me. And until next week, happy selling and bye for now. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Sales Matchmaker podcast. To hear more episodes, visit us at www.thesalesmatchmaker.com.